Welcome back to the epilogue of the series on the Zorki 3. I am happy to report that everything went according to plan. The camera is working fine. It has been tested, so I shot a couple of frames to test the shutter and the focusing. And I did a strip of 6, I think, exposures. So from 1000th to 120 to 25th of a second. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 exposures on a blue sky, and 3 exposures on a static object to validate the rangefinder and working distance. For the 6 shot with the sky, I took an initial test shot with my digital camera to make sure the exposure is pretty much correct. I didn't care for the correctness of the exposure, but the overall consistency across exposures. And my findings were that the shutter is consistent, if maybe when set to 1/1000th is actually a bit too fast, which is kind of weird for a Russian camera. They usually are way too slow, so at least one stop too slow. And it pretty much is the consequence of the diminished slit between the curtains. Now, regarding this balance between slit width and actual shutter speed, so the speed of the curtains, not the speed that's selected on the dial, I did think about it for a while, and maybe something in between would be wiser. So in between the original gap with the original tension, which is a higher tension, and my variant on this camera, so a smaller gap with smaller tension. A smaller gap and a smaller tension will get you the correct exposure. That's not necessarily an issue, but since the curtains are traveling at a slower speed, and unfortunately I don't have the means to actually measure the speed at this point, I'm about to order various components from AliExpress probably and make a new shutter tester, because my existing one is giving me weird results, so I can't base my adjustments on it. So I will try to build the improved variant that I will eventually talk about. So I'll probably make a couple of videos on those shutter testers, because it's not one, it's one with a modification. So no, not one with a modification, 2 variants of the same shutter tester and another shutter tester that is kind of an optical shutter tester. So although it uses Arduino and LEDs, it kind of reproduces the effect of the Leica shutter testers. So the oblique strips of light, and according to the shutter speed selected, you get 1, 2, or 3 strips of light. That's another story for a different day. It doesn't really matter now. The idea is that for the time being I can't really measure the speed, so just by judging the speed by ear and eye, I would say that, I don't know, maybe it's like 50% slower on this one, the speed of the curtains compared to a regular Zorki 4 that has no modifications in tension and gap. The downside of this slower speed is that if you are shooting, the downside is that you will probably get in certain circumstances the rolling shutter effect. That means even if you are using the highest speed, so 1/1000th of a second, if the subject is moving, since the curtains are traveling slow, they won't freeze. They will freeze the motion, but they won't freeze the object that's moving. So you can get, for instance, if something goes from here to here or here to here, either way, I don't know which exactly which way. Theoretically from here to here, but because it's the same direction as the shutters, because it's like this, but in the image it will be reversed. So if what you see, so in reality the object is moving from left to right, then if the speed of the object is fast enough, you will get probably an elongated object. I don't know if this makes sense, but try to imagine this is the gap of the shutter and this is the object. And if the object moves with the speed of the gap, even if the total time, the exposure time is 1/1000th of a second, your object will be kind of everywhere in the frame. So it will make a long, smudged image of itself. I don't know. It reminds me of Einstein's theory of relativity. Anyhow, doesn't matter. So if I were to do it again, I would probably go for a middle ground. So maybe a smaller gap with a little less tension, but not so small. Something like that. It pretty much sums up my feelings on this camera. So feelings, not something necessarily based on hard evidence or hard facts. Now, the advantage of this approach is the smoothness. It is super smooth and it is super quiet. And it's not my impression. So this is a Zorki 3, Soviet, right? This is not a Zorki 3. This is a Leica, German. Alright, so this Leica has been sent to me for basically shutter adjustments. So it's not a CLA in itself because it has already been serviced. It's a long story, it doesn't matter. Let's see, let's make a comparison. So right now the shutter is set on 50th. Now listen to the shot. I mean, if the microphone can pick it up, we'll see. This is the shutter from the Zorki, and this is the Leica. Now this is considerably louder than this, and this one has a more metallic sound than this. On the other hand, the sound of the Leica is more compressed as a length of time, so it's like bam, while the sound of the Zorki is more elongated, so obviously more traveling time for the curtains. Let's try it again. So Zorki, then Leica. Oh, sorry, kept my finger in the wrong place. So Zorki, Leica. I think it's quite obvious. The winding motion. It's quite comparable. I would say a very, very slight edge on the Zorki, which is quite an achievement. What is a lot nicer on the Leica, except the fit and finish obviously, is the feel of the shutter selector. It is so smooth and precise and nice and big, and it's wonderful. It's simply wonderful. But the sound, nah. I'll take this one any day. All right. So, what about if I were to compare either one of these with this one? So this is my Leica Type 3S. I really love this camera. It's super small, compact, quite a bit smaller than the Leica. Obviously this is, I think it's a Leica C, 3C, and this is a clone of Leica 3A. So this one is set to 60th, this one is set to 50th, this is one, and the other. This one just a bit smoother and tighter, so very nicer on the Leica than the Zorki, much nicer on the Leica than on the Leica. Obviously, maybe the tension on the shutter on the Leica is a bit too high. We will see. And the screw on my turret finder is loose and about to fall off. Why is that? I think this screw actually, oh yeah, it impedes the rotation of the turret. Yeah, I'll have to deal with the turret anyway. All right, and what about this? This is my favorite Leica from those that passed around here from the shutter point of view. So the shutter on this one is awesome. 50, 50. Let's do it like this. Kind of same volume, different pitch. This is a bit wider as a sound, this is more closed. I like this one the best. And if I'm to compare the Leica with the Leica, both, I mean, this Leica is a copy of this Leica. All right, Leica and Leica. Let's do that again. Leica wins hands down. All right, but what I really wanted to point out is the fact that these beasts are not as bad as people think they are. Obviously, this one is a very nice, not model, a very nice camera in itself. I'm sure you can't say the same about all Zorki 3s. For certain, you can't say the same about all Zorki 4s. But I've had and still have, it's my my personal camera, a Zorki 4, that is almost as smooth as this one, and it's not serviced yet. It's full of all lubricant and whatnot inside, but it's super smooth. So certain cameras have more potential of becoming really nice user cameras than others, and some of them are super rough from the get-go, and they will remain rough no matter what you do. But overall, this is a very, very nice camera. I'm pretty sorry I need to give it back, but yeah, it's super nice, and it's super nice, and it almost beats Leica. Actually, right now, if I were to choose between these two, I would take the Zorki. Obviously, this one is more valuable. It feels nicer overall, but as a user camera, this is the better one. It has a nice viewfinder, it's smooth, it's quiet, it looks nice. Maybe not as nice as the Barnack design, but it's very nice. Okay, so this is the end of the series. It's sort of a don't lose hope message, because eventually you will get a Soviet camera that is nice. You might need to go through a couple of them before getting there. And this is a test shot. This was the focus test. This is f2.8 focused on the text here on ISO 400 film, and exposure was taken with the digital, and it's pretty spot on. I've checked the negative, highlights are okay, shadows are okay, so the camera exposed is fine. I am very satisfied with the result. Obviously, things that could have gone differently, maybe the gap between the curtains, maybe I exaggerated a bit with it, but it was a very small change that produced quite visible differences. It's not something that happens to the cameras that have a maximum shutter speed of 500th of a second. So the distance between 500th and 1000th is quite noticeable. That on the wheel it's very small, but the difference in actual, or in the actual physics of the shutter is visible. All right, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the series. Drop a comment, ask questions. I'm open to criticism, whatever you feel like saying, please do. It's always a pleasure to read your comments and interact with you guys. And if you need the keys, I think I linked the Thingiverse STL, so the link to the Thingiverse page where I posted the design, and I will probably upload more, let's say, tools like this one for different things and applications when I get to them, or when I make a new one, and obviously after I test it. All right, thank you, see you next time.